Hi everybody, this is Diana from Sweet y Salado, and today we're going to make a Colombian black cake, which is a cake that we make for all kinds of occasions, especially baptisms, first communions, and weddings. And it's very popular because it has dry fruit, nuts, and it's actually soaked in wine. As always, the link for this recipe is going to be available at the end of the video, and it's also found in the info box below. The first thing we do to make this cake is chop all of our dry fruit and our nuts. So we're going to start with some raisins, some pitted prunes, some almonds, and pecans. Now you can use whatever other kind of nuts that you want. These are the ones that I like to use for this recipe. And we're going to process this until they're finely chopped. The next ingredient that we need for this recipe that's very important is the figs in syrup. These are very popular in Colombia, and you can find them in many Latin American stores here in the US. And we're going to chop them by hand, and the reason we do that is because they're very tender, so if we chop them in the food processor, they're going to completely disappear. So once they're chopped, we're just going to blend them in with the rest of the dry fruit and the nuts. And then we just set them aside. Now we're going to mix our dry ingredients. So we're going to start with some all-purpose flour, baking powder, some cinnamon, nutmeg, ground cloves, and salt. We're going to give it a whisk, and then we're just going to set it aside. Then in a large mixing bowl, we're going to add some room temperature unsalted butter and some white sugar. And then we're going to mix this very well until it's nice and creamy. Now we're going to add some vanilla extract, we mix again, then we're going to add some instant coffee. This is going to enhance the flavor of the cake. And some lemon zest. Now we're going to add half of the amount of our eggs, and we're going to add them one by one. Once they're well incorporated, we're going to add half of the amount of our flour mixture. Then we're going to add the rest of our eggs, again one by one. And finally, we add the rest of our flour. Now we're going to scrape our bowl just to make sure everything's well incorporated. And the last thing we're going to add is some burnt sugar or caramel color. This is very important because this is what's going to give the cake that dark, almost black color. I've seen some recipes that call for molasses or dark chocolate, but I don't recommend doing that because it's not going to give you the dark color and it's going to change the taste of your cake. So make sure that you get burnt sugar or caramel color. And again, we're going to scrape the inside of our bowl just to make sure that everything's well incorporated. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mix our dry fruit and nuts with the batter, and for that I like to use a glove because this is very thick and very dense, and we're going to do it by hand because again the fruit is actually kind of stuck together, so we need to mix it really well with our hands. Now you can bake your cake in any kind of baking pan that you want. Some people like to use a loaf pan or a round pan. I like to use a bundt cake pan because it gives it a really nice shape. So now we're going to grease and flour our pan. I'm using a baking spray. And then we're going to pour our batter inside the pan. Then we're going to bake this cake at 350 degrees for about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. And for the first hour, we're going to cover it with some aluminum foil so that it doesn't burn because, again, it's in the oven for a very long time. Once it's baked, we're going to take it out and we're going to let it rest for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, we are going to get our soaking wine ready. And for that, I like to mix it with some rum. This is optional, but this gives it a really nice flavor. And we're also going to use some sweet red wine. I like to use a Ruby Porto. It has a very nice flavor that goes really well with this cake. Then we're going to take the cake out of the pan and we're going to place it on some aluminum foil. And the reason we do that is because we need that aluminum foil to catch any liquid that may come out. And now we're going to pour our wine all over our cake. And this is a lot easier if you have a round or square cake because all you have to do is pour it all over. But since I have a bundt cake and I have a hole in the middle, I'm using a spoon just to make sure that everything goes inside the cake. Now we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap, and this is to make sure it doesn't dry out. We tuck it in really well. And then we're gonna let it rest for at least 3 days, just to make sure the cake absorbs all of that red wine. Then after 3 days, we're gonna see that the cake absorbed every single bit of that wine. And then all we have to do is unwrap it. And then remove the aluminum foil. Now, if you're not gonna eat your cake right away, just make sure you keep it wrapped in some plastic wrap, because otherwise it's gonna dry out really quickly. And now all we have to do is serve. And that's your recipe for making a Colombian black cake or wine cake. If you enjoyed this video and this recipe, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel so you can be up to date with all of my future recipes. And don't forget that you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Google+. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye, and buen provecho.